Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. This is a great session. As you've already sort of got a sense that we're going to talk about how are we navigating new technologies and anticipating future landscape. If you look at last 10, 12, perhaps 15 years, the pace at which technologies are penetrating both our professional and personal space is mind-boggling. We've seen, cloud computing. We've seen AI. We've seen 5G coming up. We've seen, various metaverse and so on and so forth. And this is really impacting not just our professional, but on a personal space as well. So this session, we have a lot to talk about how these technologies are being leveraged and what are some of the challenges. So this discussion is rather broad. We would also encourage you to ask questions. We'll be happy to take them. So with that, let me go around the panel. And why don't we just take a few seconds and introduce ourselves, and then we'll start the session.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Shakti Goel, and I look after new product development and technology at Yatra Online. Plus, I'm also responsible for data engineering, data analytics, BI, machine learning related work, and now also Gen AI. So Yatra has actually has implemented real-life practical solutions in Gen AI, and I would like to talk about it here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi, a very good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Hilal, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Razorpay. And I think most people know what Razorpay is. It's a fintech company. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aparna Chaganty. I'm an investor at Bessemer Venture Partners. We are roadmap-based investors, and I primarily invest in our software-based investments as well as our AI and ML investments.
Thank you. So let me start off with you, Shakti, your excellent background in data science and working as a chief architect capacity. How are you leveraging AI particularly to sort of enhance the customer experience and drive the business growth?
Sure. Yeah. Pushkal, basically, when I build a solution or a product, whether it is around AI or technology, there are three things I look at. That the solution should be scalable, it should be robust, and it should be highly performant, right? And for that, whatever technologies are needed, we can bring it together. And this is something I learned when I was doing my doctoral research. I had developed a lot of code in C programming, and the code required matrix solvers. I was solving partial differential equations and matrix inversion and all that code was in Fortran. So now how do I combine Fortran with C? So that is something I had learned. Yes, you can create object files, you can combine them, and you can create an executable. The same thing, the same approach I'm using now, if I can build a solution in core PHP, but if I have to include a workflow engine, I can use the Java technology for that. Now AI has come into picture, and I'll give you an example. We have developed an expense management solution which requires the users to submit their expense receipts, and you would want to scan those receipts. You would want to know what is in those receipts. So there are several ideas there. There is an old OCR technology, and you can scan the receipt and get the relevant information out of it. But now, with the advent of LLM and Gen AI, what we have been able to do is we take the receipt and we just submit it to LLM. No OCR. OCR is the thing of yesteryears now. What it does is the LLM actually scans the receipt. It will answer your questions. It will tell you whether there's any alcohol in that receipt or not, whether alcohol was consumed, what the currency of the receipt is, what is pre-tax amount, post-tax amount, based on the questions that you ask. And also, when you have to show analytics data, you can write your own code to show your reports, or you can combine newer technologies out there, for example, like Power BI from Microsoft. You can take those dashboards and then integrate in your application. So my approach has always been to take whatever is best out there, and there are ways to integrate technologies.
Fantastic, Shakti. This is the way to go about it. So let me sort of go to Hilal and sort of, you represent the other side of things. On one hand, technology does so good, but if not addressed in a right manner, it leads to, vulnerabilities. Vulnerability leads to exploit. So how are you sort of, engaged in creating a program that would assess the risks of some of these investments and some of the strategies to sort of mitigate them?
So we just heard that technology keeps evolving at a very rapid pace, right? So he was just mentioning that OCRs are basically a thing of past, right? So now it's more like natural language that you use to basically solve your problems. So when you actually sort of like look at it on a deeper level, there's a lot of technology that goes behind it, which means that your tech stack, your technology, whatever solutions that you build are going to get complicated and complex over a period of time. And that's not going to stop. So you will always have to evolve with the technology, right? So, and whatever business solutions that you actually provide. So meaning that the security has to evolve at the same pace, if not more, right? So because if you do not basically build a product with the security in mind, what will happen is that it's not necessarily a good product, right? So you may have great availability, great performance, and you will have great user experience, but if it does not have security, it's not necessarily a well-architected product. So meaning that when we have to think of strategies in terms of basically data security, privacy, making sure that the applications are built the right way, it's always about making sure that we involve the basic principles, right? So it can mix up technology plus processes that actually make those products very well architected. And then, of course, you have to basically do security by default and security by design. What I mean by that is that you don't think of security and compliance as an afterthought, right? So you actually have that in mind when you are actually designing your products. So to actually give a brief example, right? So when we think about privacy in basically a product, like LLM for that matter, so we did not necessarily have a framework which could actually address that. So it is still evolving, still ambiguity around that. So it's always going to be a challenge to adopt the perfect standard or perfect basically framework to address the privacy challenges, right? So now what we do is basically, okay, I go back to the design board, right? So I want to make sure that, okay, whatever data I actually collect or whatever data is going to be processed and whatever data is going to be used is sanitized properly. It's actually, the access controls are maintained properly. You want to make sure that, okay, you do your privacy impact analysis to understand if there is a privacy breach, what could potentially happen and how many people are going to be impacted by that. So you want to basically make sure that all those processes are basically inbuilt within that product and does not come across as, okay, yeah, I will do it later on once I understand what it is, and that never happens, right? So we are always a lag in terms of basically building effective controls around it if we do not start basically at the initial stage of product development and conceptualization.
Absolutely, you are spot on that. One of the things that we are also seeing with LLMs, particularly, is our sense to what degree we can depend on them when it comes to data accuracy. Also, the cost of acquiring data is not that easy, and keeping it relevant as it moves forward is one of the challenges that we see is happening across the board. So that brings me to you, Aparna. You bring in a unique perspective to this panel. What has been your approach before identifying the right emerging technologies to invest? It doesn't need to be AI, but generally any new technology which is coming. What generally goes on before you put money on it?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question, and I'm really happy to be here. I'll answer your question in two parts. The first is that the fundamentals of investing stay the same, whether it is an AI, Gen AI product, or it is a traditional software product. And then there's an additional layer of certain lens we take for an AI-driven investment. So I'll take both approach. I'll give an answer from both angles. So when it comes to traditional software, we definitely look at, the first thing is the team. the total addressable market. We want it to be large enough. We need to have enough conviction behind the product that, hey, this has an irrefutable right to win in the market right now. And beyond that, because we come in around Series A, Series B, we have certain metrics that we look at, which is like growth, traction, retention, churn, CAC payback, your go-to-market efficiency, all of that. So these are the general metrics we look at for all software investments. On top of that, when it comes to AI, because the stack is evolving at such a rapid pace, we have seen some common themes among startups that are winning right now. So three things that I'll touch on in there. One is the data moat. Data moat is that as long your model and your prediction is only as good as the data you have. That I'm sure even Shakti will confirm. When it comes to your data moat, we are trying to see whether you have access to data that no one else has access to. So that comes to proprietary data. Two, whether your data is scalable. As you start reaching more and more audiences, or you're going to larger and larger enterprises, does your data scale along with it? Does your data scale along with these use cases? And C is the diversity of your data. Does your training data set reflect well in the real world scenarios? Does your training data set and your model accuracy sustain from training to real world scenarios? And that's where your data moat is really, really important. And we see that as the primary kind of theme for startups coming out with a right to win. The second one is distribution moat. But distribution moat is I feel more important for AI-enabled companies than AI-first companies. By AI-enabled companies, I mean they have a software layer, they have a software foundation, and on top of that, they're using AI to deliver an additional value add. So it's not, they haven't built ground-up AI software. And both have immense value in the market. For AI-enabled companies, distribution moat becomes really important because you are basically leveraging someone else's technology and adding your layer of fine-tuning on top of it. So for distribution moat, you either, there are multiple ways in which we look at it, and it completely depends on your eventual buyer. So you can either have a product-led distribution, you can have partnership-led distribution. For example, in a health tech company, your partners can be hospitals. Your product can be white-labeled, and other companies can white-label your product and distribute it. So then there are multiple ways in which you can get a distribution moat. And third, and the most, I think, important one is is the team. In addition to having a killer founding team, we feel for AI companies, you also need to have a really strong set of AI or a research background to it, so that, because again, like both my fellow panelists said, this stack is evolving at a really rapid pace, and having a strong team that can help your product evolve at this rapid pace is really important. So, and I think these three will set your team up for success.
Fantastic. Those were some of the good insights. I guess if there are more investors here who are really willing to do some investment, these recommendation come very handy. Thank you for that, Aparna. Moving on, Shakti, you talked about the importance of data science and how you have built it in your system. What are some of the challenges really you see as the organization become more and more data driven? The datafication, data-driven, attributes. What are some of the challenges it is bringing?
Sure, Pushkal. That's actually a very relevant question. See, you can have all the technologies in the world, all new innovations, but someone has to use them, right? If you don't use them, then what good is that technology? What good is Gen AI if people don't understand, what it can give to you. So the biggest challenge I see, since I've been in the data field for a long time, it is about data governance and data rationalization. There can be multiple teams in an organization, and if it's an international company, they can have offices in multiple countries. How do you enforce the concept of data governance, making sure that whatever number is being delivered is accurate, it is correct. It all revolves around data rationalization. So if it's, for example, if it's a manufacturing division, they may say that we have manufactured that product, so for us it's sold, so we have made a sale. But the finance officer may say that no, unless the invoice has been generated, we don't have a sale. If it's a company in Austria, they may have a different definition versus a company in Germany. So how do you bring all these together, right, to make people understand and make the entire organization speak the same language? I feel in my experience, I've worked with a lot of organizations, that I believe is a huge challenge. The other thing is, whenever you work with new technologies like Gen AI, you have to convince the management or the business folks that, look, we are doing something new, you have to use it, and there will be good ROI out of it. But these technologies are such that you may, spend hours and hours on it, and still it may not be ready for production, especially, with all the hallucinations and lack of accuracy like Gen AI. These technologies are not production ready yet. So what do you do with it, right? Then, the other challenge that is going to come up, I think, in India is about the DP laws, right? All these technologies depend on data. The data belongs to the customers, and the DP laws in general says that you cannot use this data unless you are serving the customer directly. If you are not, then you have to delete the data. If you do that, then marketing, all these divisions, go out for a toss. So that is not really practical. And then also finding people who understand, all these technologies to the core. You can find a lot of people who will put together a program very quickly for random forest, let's say, for example. But how does random forest work? How does deep machine learning work? What is the transformer architecture that is behind LLM? You have to know the science, you have to do the research behind it before you use it. And finding that talent can be a challenge at times.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to need you, Shakti, again on, you brought on the point about data rationalization being a difficulty. Sort of, detail a little bit more on that. What essentially is becoming an issue?
So data rationalization is a concept in data sciences, especially when you deal with data engineering and data analytics, which says that the organization should have one and only one unique definition of a KPI. If the KPI is sale, right, what is the definition of sale? Every division of the organization, has to speak the same language, so that when they're in the room and someone says, I had a sale of $1 million, then everyone should understand what exactly that means. Will the manufacturing division say that it is $1 million worth of the product that we have manufactured, or is it $1 million worth of product that we actually sold? There could be losses, there could be breakage and all those things. So especially in the healthcare industry, there's a term called bad days. How many times, for how many days was a person in the hospital? That definition can change depending on what the hospital is, who the provider is, and what the insurance company is. So that's what I'm referring to data rationalization. One and only one definition across the organization for a KPI.
Absolutely.
Just allow me to add a little bit on that, because in our world, right, so data rationalization means basically something different, which is relevant. It's related, but it's different, right? So what we mean by data rationalization is that when you are acquiring the data, you do not go over enthusiastic about it. You only acquire data that's actually needed for that particular KPI, for that particular use case that you are trying to solve. You do not go berserk and basically acquire all kinds of data. That data sometimes is not even relevant, right? So that becomes sometimes it becomes a challenge for you to manage that. He was talking about data governance. That data governance becomes a massive challenge. And then you have to basically denoise the data. You have to remove whatever non-essential data that you collected. That's going to be an expensive exercise. So the data rationalization, in our point of view with respect to DP and all those things, is basically making sure that we only collect and use data that has been collected as part of the acceptable use. right? It should not be something that we collect, just sit on it, hope that it becomes a gold mine at some point of time, but that really does not happen. So making sure that we only collect data that the organization needs to run its business is basically data rationalization that we actually think of.
Absolutely. One of the interesting things that we hear in the large language model is this idea of hallucination. So it's an open question to everyone. What do you guys say? Is more of a bug or it's more of a product feature? So let me, anybody can sort of, take that question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have an in-house expert, so he will have a lot more valuable opinion on it.
Yeah.
So I would say that, hallucination is the nature of the beast. That is something you cannot get rid of. See, these LLMs, right, for example, ChatGPT or like Gemini, they are trained on large amounts of data, large variety of data. So it is trying to do a lot of things at the same time, right? And because of that, the model does not have enough number of neurons, to handle all this data and to be able to optimize the constants of the model. And basically what happens is, it's a simple equation. You have a model, there's an input and there's an output. And the model has a lot of model parameters, and you try to fit the output of the model to the actual observations, right, so that the model parameters are optimized. And for that, you have to continuously optimize the model and try to find something called the global minimum of that difference, and that is rarely reached. So the model parameters are hardly optimized. They may not be accurate, but they are close to accurate. Therefore, the model will many times give results that will not be accurate or that will be different at different times of the day. But there are ways to mitigate that. That is to say that you have your model and you train that in one particular area, right? For example, you take all the legal cases in the world, right, and you train the model on just the legal cases. So there's a company, I think, called Humphrey. I think a model is going to come out called Humphrey, which will be just responding to legal questions. It will not write a poem for you, right? But if you look at ChatGPT, it will write a poem for you. It will tell you whether the receipt has alcohol in it and all that. So it does a lot of things. And that will inherently lead to hallucinations.
Thank you. Hilal, you have points?
Okay, so a slightly different opinion, right? So, it's not different opinion, just a different context. It's basically like, I don't think the hallucinations that we call, right, so are because the model is bad or the model is not basically built properly. I think it's built properly. It's just that it does not have enough data, enough signals to basically make up a decision on what to basically show as an output. So what happens is basically like, imagine like you trick the model into basically like leaking information that it was not supposed to. For example, you have seen a lot of use cases, right? So for example, one of the things that, okay, help me cheat on something, right? So it will say, okay, this is an unethical thing to do, so I will not help you in cheating at it. But what you do is basically, then you actually basically use language that seems ethical, right? So, but the model does not understand it properly. It actually says that, okay, this is a legitimate question to answer, so why not answer it, right? This happens, like, for example, like one of the most popular use cases was exploit development, right? So exploit development in itself is basically, okay, it's a malicious exercise, right? But people actually got around it by saying that, okay, I want to study an exploit. This is for my research purpose. And these are my use cases, like for basically studying that particular exploit. So now it is not a malicious question. You are asking the right kind of question. This is for educational research purposes, and that's very much ethical. So the model is actually built properly. It's just that basically when you are expanding the context of the model, that's when the inferences and all those things come into picture. One of the things that actually always fascinates me is basically the causal inference, which actually models rely heavily on. And that's basically the cause and effect is always going to be depending on the context in which you are going to be using that particular model.
Absolutely. With that, let me come to you, Aparna, on initially you gave us a sense that what are some of the right indicators to invest. Now that when you have done the investment, what are some of the challenges you see these companies struggling with, adopting to these emerging technologies? What are some of the pitfalls that come in the way?
I think there are a couple things that most startups end up taking some time to figure out. The first one, I think, is figuring out their ICP, which is their ideal customer profile, and this especially because we come in as early stage investors around Series A through C. The company is in that process. Ideally, they would have figured it out, but they're in that process of still honing in on it. What we see is the faster you hone in on your ICP and the narrower it is, while making sure that the market you're addressing is still large enough, then you end up saving a lot of sales and marketing dollars as well as your product team's bandwidth. So we encourage our startups to really go out there and figure out what is your ICP as fast as possible. And it does take a lot of iterations, and this may seem like a very simple thing to say, but we see that even in like Series D, Series E companies, people are still honing in and narrowing down, okay, like maybe an enterprise company of 2,000 plus employees is my ICP. No, 10,000 plus is my ICP, because I'm seeing more and more churn in the lower ones. So having a really strong view on your ICP, narrowing it down, become really laser sharp on your ICP is one of the primary things that I feel that a lot of startups, at least in the early stages, have struggled figuring out, and eventually the successful ones are the ones that figure out and put their go-to-marketing dollars behind it. And that brings me to my second point, which is go-to-market motion. These two are really tied together very closely. And as soon as you figure out that, hey, my ICP is a small and medium business, then my go-to-market motion can be more product-led, organic, content-driven, as opposed to if my ICP is a larger-ish or mid-market-ish company, then my go-to-market motion will be completely different. It will be AE-driven sales or account-based marketing, ABM, or I go to events which cater to that particular ICP and spend my sales and marketing dollars there. So the faster you figure out the ICP, your go-to-market gets solved. And after your go-to-market, like once you've have a repeatable go-to-market motion set up, then your startup's 0 to 1 journey is complete. Then the 1 to 10 journey starts, where the founder kind of lets go of the sales and marketing and moves on to they move on from founder-led sales to sales-led sales, and the founder can put on 15 other hats that are waiting for them as they go from the 1 to 100 motion. So these are the two things I feel which are really tied together. And the third one that people come to us very often is hiring. Having that team who can let the founders, start thinking about the 1 to 100 motion. Having a team in the room that is likely more smarter than you is one of the most important decisions that the founding team ends up making. And we at Bessemer we have a team, we have our platform team that really helps with hiring, as well as we have a team of operating advisors who have been, who've held leadership roles in large companies that help with the ICP definition, as well as go-to-market definition, product, pricing, everything. So we have a team of about, I think 45 or 50 operating advisors who've led global software companies across like all the continents. And they're just an email away for the portfolios. So I think that's where we end up seeing a lot of challenges that these startups face. As a result, we've created a structure around it to help our startups and our portfolios kind of weather through this storm.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to ask a follow-up question to you on this, Aparna. The 3 challenges you laid out. The talent piece you talked about is the third and not the least. In the initial responses also from Shakti, also you talked about the talent is such an important thing. How are you really, advising your investee portfolios that what should they really think about, go about and do to sort of keep the talent pool available to them to continue to innovate?
Absolutely. I think for the talent piece, it is a very, you need to have your presence in these communities where that creme de la creme talent is present, who, like I said, is smarter than you. If me as a founder, for example, am really good at sales, then I need someone to manage my finances. So I need a really strong CFO, or I really need a very strong CISO to make sure my product is not vulnerable as I grow more and more. We as a team also have, we source candidates regularly, make sure we have a really in-depth candidate network, both our team in India as well as US, London, and Israel. So wherever as most of our software companies are kind of built in India for the globe. So they look for talent all across the globe. So we have a deep candidate network, both in the industry as well as research organizations, as well as universities. We make sure our presence is there, and along with that, our startups kind of accompany us once we start figuring out that, hey, this community is a really good fit for this particular startup or this space, and we encourage them to kind of make their presence more available in those communities. So it's a long-winded answer, but we've built a structure around it.
Absolutely, thank you. Let me quickly come to you, Hilal. I think in your initial responses, you did talk about privacy, but as more and more emerging technologies are coming up, talk about AI and ML, there is this parallel conversation about responsible AI. It's the AI that you're developing, but then what is our approach to developing it? How are we, sort of rendering it is an equal important conversation. And obviously in India, DPDP Act is a parallel stream to it that talks about, the fundamental rights being privacy. So how are you sort of balancing this, rope? On one side, you need to help the business grow, let the emerging technology come, and then at the same time, ensure that you sort of, avoiding the pitfalls of it.
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two parts. So one is basically the responsible usage of AI. So I think all of us are still figuring it out. I mean, there are various discussions at different levels. At a national level, for example, a lot of countries have come up there with their own AI laws where AI can be used ethically and responsibly, right? At the same time, there's a lot of research going into, okay, like what exactly is the boundary for basically AI, like what exactly is going to be used for, right? And what is the use case that's appropriate for AI and what's not, right? So all of those discussions in terms of technical solutions, process solutions, jurisdiction, so you have all sorts of regulations that actually come in with respect to making sure that there's governance around a responsible usage of AI. Now, what do we do on a ground level right now is basically ensuring that, okay, it does not become a breeding ground for us to have data breaches and basically any kind of data exfiltration. That's something that we are doing on the ground level right now. So it's not necessarily responsible usage of AI, but it's an aspect of making sure that everybody understands their responsibilities and what they are going to be held accountable for in case the AI is actually misused. Right? So we need to ensure that the models that we build, the data that we feed into the models, do not contain any kind of data that's going to be harmful for us if it actually gets breached or it gets exposed. So those are some of the guidelines that we have actually published. In terms of the technical solutions, there are some things that we do. For example, we have ensured that there is mandatory single tenancy for all our models, right? So it does not get mixed with other, basically like other customers or something like that, right? And it absolutely does not get used basically to build public models. Right, so that's, I think, what we are doing on a ground level. So in terms, the next part of the question, which was around how do you maintain the pace on innovation and basically efficiency in case of different types of regulations that try to kind of like govern the data, right? I think we are doing, right, at this particular time, we are doing some kind of course correction. What that means is basically like, we earlier had this idea of data principles, right? So who is going to be the owner of the data? And every single time we said the customer is the owner of the data. But it was always left to imagination, what is that we need to do to make sure that the customer is indeed owner of that data? Do we give him the rights to basically manage his data? Do we give him the rights to basically delete the data? Do we give him the rights to basically be forgotten on the platform? So we never had that kind of basically urgency before, but now we have matured a bit as an organization, as an industry. So what has happened is that like laws or regulations are coming and rules are coming in, which is most welcome in terms of basically making sure that we are actually doing the right thing. So as data processors, I may be a significant data fiduciary or not. So as a data processor, my responsibility is that I make sure that the customer data remains sacred. It has all the necessary controls, the necessary process embedded to make sure that it does not get basically misused. And only the people who are supposed to access that data actually get access to that data. And in addition to that, whatever context and whatever basically like purpose that I have collected the data from the customer is exactly for that particular purpose. So all in all, this is basically still evolving. We are still trying to figure out a standard for it. But yeah, we are going to be there.
Thank you very much. So that brought us almost to the end of our panel, but I just want to reach out to the audience. If you guys have any question, please raise your hands. I'll be happy to answer them. So there's one question at the back, if somebody can.
So we'll just pass on microphone to you.
Yeah, so I think I'm audible. So thanks for this very interesting session, and this is a question for the lady. So as you kind of look at the investments in this space, specifically for the companies which are investing a lot on Gen AI and AI technologies, so we see a lot of overlap and a lot of commoditization which is happening, like every company is trying to do the same thing. So how do you kind of look at evaluation, and what are you really looking when you look at these investments?
I think that's Aparna, you should take it.
Thank you so much for the question. You're completely right in that this is like we said, the stack is evolving really rapidly, and as a result, as more and more technology is becoming democratized, a lot of products are becoming commoditized as a result. So at Bessemer, we really believe in roadmap-based investing, and we believe in investing in companies that will stand the test of time. So we invest only when we see a path to 100 million ARR. So when we, at least in the India office, we primarily are looking for AI investments that serve the enterprise use cases right now, because we feel the consumer stack, at least at this point, is evolving really rapidly, and because of that, taking a long-term view on that is currently not possible for an early stage investor like us. So, but me personally, I have more conviction in enterprise AI use cases, because we feel, again, they have a chance and a right to establish the data moat I was talking about, as well as the distribution moat. So if they can figure out these two, then a lot of the problem is solved, and in addition to that, the team as well. So the enterprise AI use case is where I'm finding more conviction, and as time progresses, the stack evolves and kind of stabilizes, I think my thoughts around the consumer and the foundation layer will also evolve. So yeah, that's where I think.
Thank you very much. I look at the board. I think we have overshot 2 minutes, but we've kept the panel pretty much on time. I really thank all the panelists for sharing great insights, and I hope the audience would have loved it. Thank you very much.